Welcome. In today's story, we're diving into Jake's hilariously disastrous date night, all while learning some useful English vocabulary along the way. From fumbles to funny moments, each twist brings new words to expand your English skills. So get ready to laugh, learn, and pick up some handy phrases for your own adventures. Jake was a 27-year-old guy with a knack for finding himself in hilariously awkward situations. One Friday night, he had a big date lined up with Emma, a woman he'd met at a coffee shop a few days earlier. Determined to impress her, Jake booked a fancy Italian restaurant that had great reviews. What could possibly go wrong? The night started off well. Jake put on his best shirt, sprayed on a little too much cologne, and even practiced charming lines in the mirror. As he picked Emma up, he felt a wave of confidence. The drive to the restaurant was smooth, except for the part where Jake accidentally ran over a speed bump, sending his carefully styled hair into disarray. Let's do a vocabulary review and learn about the words we covered in the story so far. Knacko, a natural skill or talent for doing something. Example, Jake had a knack for getting into awkward situations. Cologne, a lightly scented perfume for men. Example, Jake sprayed on a little too much cologne. Disarray, a state of disorder or mess. Example, the speed bump sent Jake's hair into disarray. Confidence, a feeling of self-assurance. Example, Jake felt a wave of confidence as he picked Emma up. When they arrived at the restaurant, Jake tried to open the door for Emma, only to find it was a push door, not a pull. After some awkward shoving, they finally made it inside. Jake felt a bit embarrassed but brushed it off. They were soon seated at a cozy table with a candle that flickered romantically. Perfect, Jake thought. Now, just don't mess it up. Then came the menu. As a lover of simple food, Jake was confused by the exotic names. But he didn't want to look clueless, so he confidently ordered something he couldn't even pronounce, calamari fritti. The waiter nodded with approval, making Jake feel like a sophisticated connoisseur. Little did he know, he had just ordered a massive plate of squid, which he wasn't exactly fond of. Vocabulary review. Embarrassed, feeling self-conscious or awkward. Example, Jake felt a bit embarrassed but brushed it off. Romantically, in a way that relates to love. Example, the candle flickered romantically. Exotic, unfamiliar or unusual, often from a foreign place. Example, Jake was confused by the exotic names on the menu. Connoisseur, an expert judge in matters of taste. Example, Jake tried to act like a food connoisseur at the restaurant. When the food arrived, Jake's eyes widened at the sight of tentacles. Trying to play it cool, he picked up a piece, but the slippery squid fell off his fork, bounced off the table, and landed right on Emma's lap. Mortified, Jake stammered, "Sorry, it's lively squid." Emma burst into laughter, finding the whole thing oddly charming. The next disaster came with the spaghetti. Emma was twirling her pasta elegantly, but Jake not so much. His attempts ended up with a noodle flinging sauce onto his own shirt. He quickly tried to wipe it off with his napkin, only to realize it was the fancy cloth napkin, not a disposable one. This is not going as planned, he thought, feeling his face turn beet red. Vocabulary review. Mortified, extremely embarrassed or ashamed. Example, Jake was mortified when the squid landed on Emma. Endearing, inspiring affection or warmth. Example, Emma found Jake's clumsiness endearing. Elegant, graceful, and stylish in appearance or manner. Example, Emma was twirling her pasta elegantly. Beet red, very red, usually from embarrassment. Example, Jake's face turned beet red when he spilled sauce on himself. But Emma seemed to be having a good time. She found Jake's bumbling efforts endearing, laughing at each mishap rather than judging him. "You know," Emma said between laughs, "this is the most entertaining date I've been on." Jake finally relaxed, realizing that maybe being perfect wasn't as important as being real. As the dinner came to an end, Jake decided to skip dessert. He figured he'd spare himself further embarrassment. They walked out of the restaurant together, laughing about the night's calamities. "Thanks for the best dinner disaster ever," Emma said, smiling. "Let's do this again sometime." Jake grinned, knowing that despite everything going wrong, it had somehow gone very, very right. Vocabulary review. Bumbling, clumsy, or awkward in movement or manner. Example, Emma found Jake's bumbling efforts endearing. Entertaining, providing amusement or enjoyment. Example, Emma said this was the most entertaining date she'd been on. Calamity, an event causing damage or distress, a disaster. Example, Emma called it the best dinner calamity ever. Grin out to smile broadly. Example, Jake grinned, knowing everything had somehow gone right. As Jake and Emma left the restaurant, Jake was feeling lighter than he had in a long time. Maybe all the fumbles and flubs made the date funnier, more memorable. In his mind, the most nerve-wracking part of the night was behind him. But as they walked back to the car, the universe seemed to have one last trick up its sleeve. Jake reached his car, fumbled with his keys, and while trying to make small talk with Emma, managed to drop them right under the car. "Oh, classic Jake move," he mumbled, kneeling down to retrieve them. But just as he reached out, he felt the back of his pants tear with a loud rip. He froze, keys in hand, feeling the unmistakable draft. Emma tried to stifle a laugh, but her amused grin was impossible to hide. "Need some sewing help?" she teased. Jake, his face now matching the tomato sauce stain on his shirt, scrambled to stand up, laughing at himself. "I'm starting to think the restaurant was cursed," he joked. Vocabulary review. Flub or mistake or blunder. Example, Jake's date was full of flubs that made it memorable. Fumble to handle something clumsily. Example, Jake fumbled with his keys and dropped them under the car. Classic, typical, or usual. Example, dropping the keys was a classic Jake move. Audibly, or in a way that can be heard. Example, the rip in his pants was audibly clear to both of them. Emma smiled, pulling out a hair tie from her bag and looping it through his belt loop to hold things together. Problem solved, she winked, clearly charmed. Back in the car, Jake felt a mixture of relief and ridiculousness as they recapped each hilarious mishap. But just when he thought he could finally relax, he noticed the fuel light was blinking. "Oh no," he muttered, trying to keep his cool. Emma noticed. "Don't tell me," she started. Jake nodded, chuckling despite himself. "Looks like we're going on an adventure," he grinned, pulling into the nearest gas station. Vocabulary review. Mishap, or an unfortunate but minor accident. Example, the ripped pants were just one of many mishaps that evening. Amused, finding something funny or entertaining. Example, Emma was amused by Jake's continuous blunders. Relieved, feeling relaxed or at ease after a stressful situation. Example, Jake felt relieved that Emma found a mishaps funny. Adventure, an exciting or unusual experience. Example, Jake joked that they were about to go on an adventure. At the pump, Jake tried to handle the nozzle, but his attempt to appear smooth, he accidentally squeezed the trigger too hard, spraying gasoline on his shoes. Emma, watching from the car, burst into laughter, genuinely unable to contain herself anymore. "You really are a one-man comedy show, aren't you?" she laughed. But as Jake climbed back into the car, wiping his shoe with paper towels, Emma reached over and squeezed his hand. "You know, this has been the most fun I've had in ages." "I mean it." Jake looked at her, seeing warmth in her eyes, and smiled, feeling more grateful than embarrassed. Vocabulary. Nozzle, a device at the end of a tube that controls the flow of liquid. Example, Jake squeezed the nozzle too hard, spraying gasoline on his shoes. Comedy show, an entertainment that makes people laugh. Example, Emma called Jake's Misadventures a one-man comedy show. Burst into laughter, to start laughing suddenly. Example, Emma burst into laughter when Jake sprayed his shoes. Grateful, feeling thankful or appreciative. Example, Jake felt grateful that Emma was enjoying herself. When they finally reached Emma's place, she turned to Jake with a grin. "Next time, maybe we should just go for a walk in the park," she joked. "Less room for disaster." Jake laughed, nodding. "I think I can manage that," he said. She leaned over, gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, and said, "Thanks, Jake." Same time next Friday. As he drove away, Jake couldn't help but grin, realizing that maybe all his quirks and blunders had done the trick. Instead of making a flawless impression, he'd shown Emma exactly who he was, accidents and all. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best thing he could have done. Vocabulary review. Smile, a pleased or amused facial expression, usually showing teeth. Example, Emma turned to Jake with a smile, joking about their evening. Manage out to be able to do something. Example, Jake thought he could manage a simpler date next time. Quirk, a unique or unusual trait. Example, Emma found Jake's quirks charming. Blunder, a careless mistake. Example, Jake's blunders made the night unforgettable. Thanks for watching. We hope Jake's hilarious date night mishaps brought a smile to your face and taught you some new English vocabulary. Remember, even awkward moments can be great learning opportunities. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more fun English lessons. See you soon.